let's go back to where we stopped off before,
Yeah.
because okay, we were at the Battle of Adwa,
Yeah.
and the Italians were defeated in 1896.
Yeah.
But of course, they never gave up that idea of conquest in Africa and
Yeah.
having territory there.
Yeah.
And they felt that that defeat had to be defended. The defeat had to be reversed, if you will.
Yeah.
So they came back in 1935 now with Benito Mussolini. Can you take
Yeah.
us into 1935 and then Second World War, etc. And
Yeah. In 1935, Italy was now under fascist rule. So, and the fascist leader was Benito Mussolini, and he saw himself in many respects as a reincarnation of the ancient Roman emperors. So the whole Roman salute became the fascist salute. And he wanted to restore that old Roman glory. So one of the things that they did was to conquer Ethiopia. And this time they had the aircraft that could do the bombings, the poison gas, the genocide. They were able to do a lot of horrible things. But what the fascist invasion of Ethiopia did was it galvanized Black people from all over the world. Jomo Kenyatta wrote Facing Mount Kenya, and he mentions the crisis, and he mentioned how appalled and outraged he was that an ancient Black kingdom was being overthrown by fascists. You had Nigerians in London forming the Abyssinian Association, again, to galvanize the Nigerians that were in London against this outrage. You had African Americans, you had so-called West Indians, you had all these different Black people forming different associations to support Ethiopia. But
Ethiopian World Federation came out of that too.
Yeah. And the result of that was, of course, Shashamane. Yeah. So yeah, so consequently, there was a lot. So in other words, you could argue historically that the invasion by the fascists of Ethiopia put Black people all over the world on the same page because of this crisis. Now, the one group of people that didn't represent were the people in Ethiopia. Some of them rebuffing the attempts to help them from other Blacks, because at this time, ideology was spreading that Ethiopians aren't actually Africans, they are Hamites, they are Semites, and all this kind of foolishness. And that seriously damaged the reputation of Ethiopia, seriously damaged. And it was only really after World War II, when Haile Selassie stepped very, very correctly, that the reputation of Ethiopia went back up again. But that time period, 1935, Ethiopians didn't represent. They represented in 1896, but they didn't represent then, you know?
That's an interesting, shall we say, almost transformation, because also at that time, Eritrea, in a sense, belonged to the Italians, as did Somalia.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was only Ethiopia that was still standing up, so to speak, in the Horn of Africa.
Yeah, you're right. And as some Eritreans remind me, yes, Ethiopia defeated the Italians at Adwa, but the Italians still kept Eritrea, you know?
So again, you know, let's go back to how Mussolini was defeated. He was really defeated by the Allies in terms of the whole World War II effort.
Yeah.
Across North Africa and East Africa, the Allies rebuffed him.
Yeah.
And Haile Selassie at that point in time spent his time in exile, in Bath in England. As a matter of fact, I visited the house where he stayed. He has since deeded the house to the community. And a
Yeah.
lot of the Rastafarians, as you mentioned, occupied it or taking care of it, etc., etc. But his role,
Can I ask a question here, sir?
I just want to make a point. His role was more a diplomatic role
Yeah.
than the role of a warrior, such as
Yeah.
Menelik.
Yeah.
There was quite a distinction there.
Yeah, can I just jump in here, sir? Because I gather, but I don't have the proof, but maybe you're aware of the proof. I gather that when the emperor was in Britain, he had a Black Caribbean speechwriter who was female. Do you know about this, sir?
No, I'm not aware of that. No.
Yeah. And the reason why is I see, I'm trying to get the facts on this. So anyone watching this, put the facts in the, type underneath the presentation. So I'm trying to get the facts on this because I'm trying to track down who that woman was.
Mm-hmm.
Because I suspect you are an emperor, you're in Britain. As far as you're concerned, you're Hamito-Semitic, something, 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 so you're not African. And you come up against anti-Black racism for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to change your perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that the theory that I'm working on is that's why my man stepped a lot more correct after World War II. Do you see?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Interesting, yes, because you are correct in stating that there was a period when whether the Ethiopians were thinking that themselves or it was a propaganda move from the forces that tried to divide Africans, that this whole business of the Ethiopians being Hamites or Shemites, meaning Semites,
Mhm.
really being truly, quote, Negro, whatever that means.
Yeah.
And of course, these are all, acronyms, shall we say, words used by the dominant group to define us in any way they want to define us
True
at
statement.
any particular, point in time. The question is whether the Kool-Aid was totally, imbibed by the Ethiopians themselves. And this is something that, you don't really know because it depends on who you talk to or who you meet at what period of time and whether it's a minority opinion or a majority opinion. But that was out there. And I think that was also one of the criticisms of my dad, and in terms of Ethiopians really reaching out to the Black diaspora in terms of assistance during that second invasion, in terms of 1935. And I think in response to that, then they created the Ethiopian World Federation in terms of that criticism. But it was a dispute that was going on during that period.
Yeah. But to be fair to Ethiopia, they're the only country that has cut off a piece of land for the diaspora and say, here, have that. Yeah. And I'd like to see other African countries be doing exactly that, cut off a piece of land and say, hey, that's yours. You can take that.
Another relationship, shall we say, between, the emperor and the diaspora. There were two pilots, one of whom was Hewlett Jack, which was an African American, and his plane was supported by my dad, and he was attempting to fly to Ethiopia, and I think he did get there, etc., etc., and contributed to the Ethiopian Air Force initially. But then there was another gentleman, I think his name was Johnson, but you can correct me. He ended up being, and of course he was also an African American, and I was just there at Ethiopian Airlines and took a picture with his bust that's there.
His bust is there?
Yes, his bust is there. And at the headquarters of the Ethiopian Aviation University. but he used to fly the plane of Emperor Haile Selassie, and he really was, shall we say, important in
Yeah.
starting the whole Air Force of Ethiopia, Ethiopian Airlines,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that's memorialized by a statue that is there. So
Yeah.
Ethiopian Airlines got its start from a diaspora person who went to Ethiopia during
Hmm.
that period in 1935, I guess going on to 40, etc., um,
Yeah.
uh, and the end of World War II, and helping to establish the Ethiopian Airlines, and that is acknowledged,
Yeah.
the hierarchy of the Ethiopian Airlines, and of course the government itself.
Greetings. My name is Robin Walker. I'm also known as the Black History Man. I am perhaps best known for my 2006 book, When We Ruled. Based on this book, I'm launching a new online history course aimed at you, the adults. You could be a parent, you could be a teacher, a mechanic, cleaner, professionals, care workers, security guards, taxi drivers, kitchen workers, entrepreneurs, tech heads, lawyers, all of you. We want people from all over the world to be empowered by our content. We want you to gain mastery over your history and heritage. And you can do this by subscribing to our course. Click on the link to get this powerful, life-changing material.
Yeah, our history is very wonderful in terms of the resistance, not only the resistance but the triumph, and we don't often recognize the triumph, and we tend to emphasize the defeats, because again, that is what the propaganda machine of the people who oppress us keep telling us. We were defeated here, and we were defeated here, and we were defeated there. But
Can I jump in there, sir?
yeah, please. Yeah.
And this is why, because here's the thing. At approximately the same period, the British tried to take over Sudan. And during that same period, the Sudanese were rebelled under Mohammed Ahmed, also known as the Mahdi.
Yes.
And essentially, 1882 is when they kicked off, 1884, all the way up to 1885. They actually destroyed British rule in Sudan. Now, the Brits came back, but the main point is that was a victory initially. Now, of course, when the Brits came back, they came back with machine guns and all the rest of it. But the point being is that the Mahdist rebellion in Sudan could have been, we could have been talking about it had the Brits not come back with machine guns. Do you see?
Yeah.
And the same thing goes with in South Africa, in Zululand.
Mhm.
You had, of course, the Battle of Isandlwana, when the Zulus destroyed a British army in less than 2 hours.
Mhm.
And again, it's only when they came back with machine guns. Yeah, or the Maxim gun. So these are examples. In other words, the idea that the conquering European powers were all powerful during the colonial period. No, they weren't.
Yes. I think that's important for us to recognize. And it's the same way with our heroes. We have to recognize who our heroes are, because very often the European powers try to give us heroes.
It's true.
But it's the people who have collaborated with them that they're giving us as our heroes. So they distort, history. They distort, the reality of our experiences and their experiences. So the
Yeah.
whole thing is an illusion, and is kept alive by propaganda.
Yeah.
I mean, just to get up to the current phase now, they're still telling you that somehow the Ukrainians are going to beat the Russians. It's a total impossibility. The Ukrainians are being destroyed on a daily basis. They're
Yeah.
still telling you that Israel has some right because Hamas initiated some sort of an attack. Israel has a right to commit genocide. Nobody has a right to commit genocide, but you put out your propaganda machine, and it has nothing to do with truth. It has nothing to do with honesty. It has nothing to do with ethics. It has nothing to do with international law. And it's important for us to see this, that the whole facade of European civilization is nothing but a facade. It's based on lies. It's based on a distortion of historical fact. And it's based on a distortion of who they are and what they have done. And the damage that Churchill, did to the Indians in Bengal, the damage that he did to Sudan, etc., and African people all over the world. But of course, he's a European hero. Truman is
Not only that, what's really, really strange is that, I don't know if you're aware of this, but there's a joke that white British people have, that black British people have the common name Winston.
By the way, my middle name is Winston, I'm Julius Winston.
Right, now can you see that the amount of us that were almost certainly named after Winston Churchill? Now, how ironic.
I think my Winston came before Churchill, though, I think. Because I was born in 1933, and Winston came alive in the 1940s, maybe. I'm not sure, but whatever.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be said that I was named after Winston. But continue your point.
Yeah, so basically, there was a generation of Black Caribbean men who were named after Winston Churchill. Now, how ironic is that?
Yes. All of us bear these names, the Cecil Rhodes and the Rhodes Scholarship, all of these things that we admire. But all of it is built on the backs of theft and abuse of Native African people.
Yeah. Yeah, so the other thing too is, I think the importance of Adwa, which I think needs to be stressed, is when I was in Ethiopia in December, we made a trip to Southwest Ethiopia, to the lands of Oromo, to the lands of the Maji, to the lands of the Bench, countries that weren't a part of Ethiopia back in the day. So when people were talking about the great civilization of Aksum, the great civilization of Lalibela, the great period of Gondar, these places were not a part of Ethiopia. They were actually separate countries. And then during the time of Menelik and some of the earlier rulers, they conquered these lands and brought them into the Ethiopian Empire. So Ethiopia is quite a, if you like, a disparate set of kingdoms that were brought together as an empire. But what they're all proud of, and this is where Adwa comes in, what they're all proud of is the roles that the different kingdoms played in coming together to defeat a conquering power. And so I'm aware that Ethiopia is about to be doing a whole bunch of celebrations to, and they make it a point of marking the Adwa things, an important part of their calendar. And Ethiopia has been engaged in other Pan-African activities, such as the ones that you're involved in and I'm involved in.